Okay, hello everyone, Mark Anderson Audio here, and today we're going to be talking about building and maintaining an audio computer for use with, say, your Pro Tools, Logic, Reason, Ableton, whatever you want. Having a computer that actually runs your audio software efficiently and effectively with minimal crashes and errors is not quite as easy as maybe our hearts would desire it to be. So today we're going to look at some of the reasons for this. Okay, so audio computers need to have fast multi-core processors. So in the modern day and age, all our DAWs, our Pro Tools, our Logic, whatever, they do a lot of multitasking. And multitasking is very complex, and we can ease the stress of multitasking by having multiple core CPUs. So for example, quad cores, 6 cores, 8 cores, whatnot. The more cores, usually the better for audio. We need to have lots of RAM. I feel like I should underline that, lots and lots and lots of RAM. The modern DAWs and the modern kind of Windows or Mac operating systems use tons of RAM just to exist when they're not even doing anything. So to actually run lots of audio and complex multi-track sessions with, say, like 30 tracks of drums or whatnot, we need lots of RAM. If you use things like sample libraries like BFD drums or Superior Drummer or Contact, any of this sort of stuff, they all use tons of RAM as well. So get as much RAM as you can possibly afford. The more RAM, the more better, and the more happiness. I would say don't even consider building a new audio PC with less than 4 gigabytes of RAM. Just it's not going to be worth it. You're going to need to upgrade it pretty much straight away. So the more RAM, the better. Multiple hard drives. This is an utter necessity. If you see, this is a problem a lot of students have when they have laptops. They have, say, your Pro Tools or Logic, whatever, installed on their laptop, which only has a single hard drive in it, and then they're trying to run kind of audio sessions. Basically what happens there is the hard drive is almost always the slowest part of any PC. It's the bottleneck. So when you're trying to run a software application from it, trying to run your Windows or Mac operating system, and trying to run a complex audio session, your hard drive is just not going to be able to keep up, so you're going to get lots of buffer errors and various different kind of errors and crashes. So what you should always do is have your Windows or Mac OS installed on one hard drive. On the same hard drive, have your Pro Tools, Logic, whatever, your audio software, and then on a separate hard drive, you should be running your actual audio session, which has all your audio data and whatnot. And that means that the two hard drives can work together and make your computer better. Having lots and lots of hard drives is always great. It's actually preferable to run an audio session off a USB drive than it is to have it installed or have it running on the same hard drive as your Pro Tools and your Windows OS or whatnot. So lots of hard drives will make your life better. Try and get lots of USB ports, actually ones that are built into your PC or Mac. USB hubs are kind of okay if you need to, say, plug a mouse or keyboard into them, but you should never have an audio interface or any sort of MIDI keyboard or any important piece plugged into a USB hub. They should always be plugged directly into your computer itself. For pretty cheap, about £10, you can buy PCI cards for like a PCI expansion card for your PC that has like 4 or 5 USB ports on it. These are an infinitely better purchase than a USB hub will ever be. Finally, the audio computers need to be as quiet as possible. I do a lot of Foley and sound effects work, and my studio is only one room, so my PC is in the same room as where I'm doing my Foley work. So it needs to be as quiet as possible, because otherwise, whenever I'm doing Foley, I'm going to get lots of computer noise in the background. And as anyone who does post-production stuff knows, trying to get rid of noise on, say, like a voiceover or a dialogue thing or sound effect work is an absolute nightmare, not worth the hassle. So the less noise there is at the source, the more likely you are to get a clean take in the end. Okay, additionally, what we should try and do is on our audio computer is we should not have it permanently connected to the internet. The internet always wants to do stuff. It's like a really needy friend, it's just always wants stuff, always wants to update this or update that. And this kind of stuff can interrupt your audio pipeline and can cause sessions to kind of crash out or get buffer errors, all the stuff we hate. Additionally, antivirus software can stop this, can cause problems as well. A lot of antivirus software has kind of a suspend mode where you can turn it off for a handful of hours. If you're not comfortable having no antivirus on your system, which in fairness a lot of us are, then this sort of suspend mode can be good when you're working on an audio session. So what I tend to do is, I don't have Wi-Fi on my computer normally, so what I do is I unplug the Ethernet cable so I'm not connected to the internet, then I can turn off my antivirus software and run Pro Tools, and it will be much more efficient to run Pro Tools that way. Additionally, you should have as less other stuff on your computer as possible. So stuff, applications, games, kind of apps, other installed software, try and have as little of it as possible. As I say, especially if you're going to be connected to the internet, because the internet always wants to update everything, and if you have lots of bits of software, the internet's going to keep poking you on the shoulder and be like, I want to update something, I want to update something, and you're going to get more kind of buffer errors or audio problems. Okay. So noise is a big kind of component of audio computers. We have to try and minimize noise as much as possible. So what kind of stuff generates noise? Standard everyday hard drives kind of whir away and make annoying noises and clicks, as I'm sure you've all heard. Solid state drives they don't have any moving components, but are very expensive. In about 3-4 years, solid state drives will probably be super cheap, and all audio computers will have them. But for the time being, standard hard drives, you know, they're going to be doing a lot of the work, and they do make noise. CPU fans also make noise. CPUs run incredibly hot and need CPU fans to cool them. CPU fan is one of the kind of primary noise making parts in any computer. If you have a graphics card, that will likely have a fan on it as well. You may have case fans on the side of your PCs or on your Mac case. They will also cause noise. Your power supply will have a fan, and also your DVD, CD or Blu-ray drive things will also cause noise as well. Okay, so here I have a little diagram of a PC, and we're going to be talking about airflow. So this is cooling versus noise. So computers just generate crazy amounts of heat. There's a fantastic video on YouTube of someone cooking some bacon on a CPU processor that he's taken the fan off, and if you take the fan off, your CPU processor will literally just burst into flames at some point. Like, they run crazy hot. So my PC at the moment is currently running about 50 degrees centigrade, and that's kind of idling. It's not really doing much work, and it's still about 50 degrees centigrade. So, and that's with a fan cooling it down, so you get an idea of how hot these things run. If you have poor cooling in your computer, it will cause crashes and decrease component life expectancy. So a lot of people that get the blue screen of death or the beach ball of death, these sort of things, they think it happens for no reason. But one of the primary reasons is your computer has gone above a certain temperature threshold, and somewhere within the BIOS of the system there will be a number that says once your computer temperature goes above, say, 75 degrees centigrade, just power everything off, turn everything off, because the computer is doing that to make sure nothing bursts into flames. It's a precautionary system. So the better your cooling is, the less likely you are to have any of these crashes. So if we look at this diagram here, look down at the bottom, this is an intake fan. So this is a fairly standard PC case here. Got an intake fan that's going to be taking in some cool air, and as the air rises, it will increase in temperature and get warmer, and then hot air is extracted at the back. This is a fairly kind of standard, kind of basic example of how the temperature heats up in a case, and how you can cool it by pulling in the cool air at the bottom and extracting the warmer air up the top. So we're going to have a look at a couple of different PC cases here. So here, this case here has got a couple of intake fans on the front that's going to be drawing in cooler air from the outside world, and then it's got 5 different extractor fans that are going to be pulling out the hot air from the case. So this is a kind of fairly standard. These cases are a bit more expensive. I think these are gaming PC cases here, which tend to have lots of fans because gaming PCs tend to run very hot. But anyway, we'll move on. So this is a picture of a very lovely case that has good airflow. So good airflow is very important to keeping your PC case cool. So in this case, down at the bottom, we have an intake fan that's going to be drawing in the cool air, and then an extractor fan that's going to be pumping out the hot air, taking out the hot air. What's worth noting about this case is just how uncluttered it is. So you can see pretty much just visually how easy it would be for the air to move through this case. You know, it comes in the intake, goes out the extractor, very clean. Conversely, this is a picture of a case with very bad airflow. So we can see there's cables absolutely everywhere. There's a huge big graphics card here. It's just cables and mess absolutely everywhere. There's even kind of cables hanging across some of these fans. So the air in this case will have a much harder time moving around. And because of that, that air will increase in temperature, and that will increase the temperature of your case. So if we go back to the previous slide, the good airflow here is going to allow the case to be quieter and run cooler. So, cool. Move on. So, we have a little chat about fan size. So, you can buy fans of lots of different sizes for your case or your CPUs or your graphics cards. Larger fans move more air and rotate more slowly and are quieter. So they tend to have lower RPM, rotations per minute, but they move quite a lot of air. And lower RPM means they'll be quieter. Smaller fans have to spin incredibly quickly, have a very high RPM to move enough air. And they are very noisy. That's that horrible whirring sound. So when you're kind of looking for case fans or CPU fans, you should be looking for sizes around 120 millimeters and 140 millimeters are fairly standard larger fan sizes, which tend to move a lot of air, tend to provide pretty good cooling, and aren't particularly noisy. So that's what we're looking for audio computers. Right, what else can we do here? So what else can we do to minimize noise? So these things here, these things that look like really preposterous car stereos, are fan controllers that go in the front of your PC case. What a fan controller does is it allows you to reduce the voltage that's being sent to your fans. So why would you want to do this? Well, when you reduce the voltage going to your fans, you reduce the speed that they rotate at, which means that they'll be less effective at cooling, but since they'll be rotating slower, it will be generating less noise. So for example, when I do my Foley work and I need as close to dead silence as I possibly can, I turn down the voltage on my fans to make them run quieter while I do my recording. And then once my recording's finished, I turn up the voltage again to get those the fans spinning at a normal speed and thus providing adequate cooling. These fancy Fantouche ones here also have temperature gauges on them for the different components in your system. So what you can do is if say your CPU is running at a very low temperature, say like 30 degrees, then you can just turn down the voltage of your CPU fan, and then you're going to get less noise out of it. And if it's still at a low temperature, then you know it's going to be fine. It's not going to explode or burst into flames or anything, which is great. Okay, so down here we have a couple of other things that we can put inside our case. This is acoustic absorption materials. So this first set here is 3 big blocks that you buy, and you just squish them into parts of your PC case. So they tend to be very specific sizes, so they'll fit, say, in a hard drive bay or a DVD slot bay, and you can just kind of squish them in there, and they will provide some absorption of the noise inside the case. These are very easy to install. I think that they're fairly cheap. I think I bought maybe 3 of them for about £15, maybe a little bit less than that. And you squish them in your case, and they provide a little bit of absorption. What they also do is they can actually improve airflow in a case that already has pretty good airflow. By squishing these things into all the empty spaces, what it does is it creates a much more focused path for the air to move, so it can provide better airflow. This stuff at the bottom, this kind of lining that you put inside your case along the actual sides of the case, I bought some of this and it was a nightmare to install, an absolute nightmare, very fiddly. And I didn't really see or hear, I suppose, much of a difference at the end. A lot of expensive cases come with this sort of stuff built in, so maybe that's great, but actually manually installing it is not really much fun at all, and doesn't really provide much benefit in the end, and I'm speaking directly from experience there. It can also increase temperature a little bit as well. So, okay, so water cooling is another option where you use a kind of water pump system to basically pump kind of cool liquid gel stuff around your case to cool its vital components. There are some water cooling systems that are very close to silent or even entirely silent, but there are some that are actually pretty noisy and have a very loud pumping system. So it depends on what system you get, how much benefit you'll really get from it. Water cooling systems tend to be pretty expensive, and they also require quite a bit of maintenance, and if you're installing them yourself, you have to be really careful because you can leak like liquid gel stuff all over the inside of your computer, which is very bad. So I'm going to be kind of looking today at more of the sort of slightly cheaper alternatives to systems. So I'm going to skip over water cooling because it requires usually quite a high cost, it's quite expensive, and it can be more of an expert's thing. If you're quite new to custom computers and custom computer components, water cooling is not a good place to start. Okay, so choosing a computer in general. So Macs are used very commonly in pro audio. If you go to like kind of gigs of like, say, I don't know, like Skrillex or Deadmau5, or if you watch YouTube videos of like great DJs or great big studios, they very commonly use Macs. And the reason for this is Mac Pros are reliable and quiet. So the Mac Pro systems, or the really good high-end Mac laptops, very reliable and very quiet. They are, of course, very expensive. And this is the word I want to highlight here: pro audio. Macs are very expensive. If you are not earning a full-time living doing audio, I kind of really don't think you should be able to justify buying a Mac to do it with, because they are very expensive. And the cheaper, sort of in inverted commas here, the cheaper Macs aren't really powerful enough. So if you have £1,000 to spend, you're probably better spending £1,000 on a PC than £1,000 on a Mac. But if you have, say, £2,000 to spend, then you could probably get a Mac Pro and it's going to do everything you need for you. So don't jump on the Macs are cool for professional audio train if you can't afford it, because it's not a great decision. PCs are much cheaper alternative, like much cheaper. The price comparison to, say, like a £1,000 Mac or £1,000 PC, the PC will just be a much higher specifications. PCs are very easily customizable. You can buy all sorts of components for them and go inside them and tinker with them to your heart's content. Tinkering and putting new parts inside your PC is nowhere near as scary as it looks. It's very difficult to screw it up, so don't worry too much about that. And there's lots of great videos on YouTube, for example, about how to do it and how to do it well. Choosing compatible components can be kind of difficult. If you're building a system completely from scratch, you'll probably have to do a lot of research to make sure all your components are going to work together. What we're going to talk about in a minute is services like dinopc.com, for example, is the one that I used, where you choose a bunch of items and then they build the PC for you. And they'll basically send you an email telling you if such and such a component isn't compatible with something else. So that takes away a lot of the nerves and the guesswork from it. There are an infinite variety of PCs, which can make troubleshooting kind of difficult. All of us have had problems with Windows computers in the past, there's no doubt about that. But like I said right near the beginning, the less stuff you have installed on a computer, the more likely it is to work. So if you're very serious about having an audio computer for audio work, then you're not going to have games installed on it, you're not going to have 3,000 different apps, you're not going to have like Twitter and Facebook open all the time, any of this sort of stuff. If it's just for audio and you keep your install very clean, you're going to have infinitely less problems with your system. There are several companies that sell pro audio ready PCs. They're kind of looking directly at the pro audio market, but I've found that they always seem to be super expensive for what you get. So I would always be a bit hesitant about using those services. I'm a bit dubious that they're overcharging. Okay, so choosing a computer. So custom spec PCs are very good value. There are specialist companies that will build them for you. So like I said, dinopc.com is the one that I used. And they allow you to choose each of the components. And that's the key part, because when you're building a quiet machine, we want each component to be the quietest version of that component. So when you're choosing your power supply, your graphics card if you need one, your CPU cooler, you can choose the quietest ones. And a lot of them will have a little description of each component, and it will say how many decibels does this fan generate, how many decibels does this fan generate, and you can choose the quietest ones. This part as well, super important. You're not going to end up paying for parts you don't need. If you go to a normal PC shop or a computer shop like PC World or whatnot, you're going to be paying for all this cruddy software that they always install on your computer. They'll probably want to bundling cheapo speakers that are really rubbish, like a mouse and keyboard. Like me, I already have a mouse and keyboard. I already have speakers that are really good. I already have a monitor. I have all these things. I don't need an SD card reader. I don't need some cheap USB hub. I don't need that stuff. So when you're buying a custom spec PC, you don't end up with stuff that you don't need, which is very good. It means we can maximize our money, get the most value out of it. So custom spec PCs can be a bit intimidating for some people. There is a lot of kind of research involved, but hopefully what I've discussed today will help take away some of the nerves there. And installing Windows from scratch can require care. In the internet age, installing Windows from scratch is infinitely easier than it was before the internet. Before the internet, installing Windows was the most terrifying thing in the whole world. You kept getting asked to do stuff that you didn't have a clue what it meant. It was terrifying. But if you have like a laptop set up next to you while you install Windows on your new PC, it's super easy. You can just Google how to install Windows from scratch, and there's a bazillion great guides that take you step by step through the process. So choosing a processor for your PC. So the two main processor types are AMD and Intel. AMD processors tend to be cheaper. Intel processors tend to give better performance, but tend to be a bit more expensive, actually quite a lot more expensive really. So both are good in their own respects. So if we focus on our audio PC here, DAWs, or like your Pro Tools, your Logic, whatever, require a lot of multitasking like we talked about earlier. So it's better to have lots of multi-cores but that run a little bit slower than it would be to have, say, a dual core that was very, very fast. So I would much rather have a slower quad core than a faster dual core, because our DAWs require so much multitasking. The AMD processor I have in my audio PC is the AMD 1055 Black, I believe it's called. It's a 6-core processor, and I've had really good success with it. It's been excellent for me. So AMD provide the cheapest 6-core alternatives. Intel do a lot of very good quad cores, but as I say, 6 cores that tend to be a little less efficient are actually better for audio purposes. Okay, so here's 3 random websites that you can check out for building custom PCs. DynoPC is the one that I used. I really liked it. The interface for building a PC is very nice there. And as I say, if you have incompatible components, they will let you know. They're not going to let you build a PC that's going to explode the moment you turn it on. Overclockers.com is much more focused towards gamers. They overclock your CPUs to get as much performance out of them. They tend to be a wee bit more expensive because of that reason. But if you like super fast processors, maybe you're going to be doing, I don't know, kind of video processing work as well, then overclockers might be what you're looking for. And then quietpc.com specialize in very quiet PC components, so they're a good place to check out. They also have excellent customer service, very friendly, very useful. So there's loads of other custom spec PCs websites out there, so feel free to try other ones. Watch out for hidden delivery charges. When I got my DynoPC thing, I think the delivery cost didn't get added to the end, and I think it was about £50, so do watch out for that. This is a super awesome tip. So in the UK at least, a lot of universities will provide a free copy of Windows for students, which is excellent, because that can save you usually between about £70 and £90, which is fantastic, and that allows you to spend that money on something much better. So do inquire with your university or any kind of educational institute that you may be affiliated with if you can get a free copy of Windows. When I was working at a university, I also got a free copy of Windows for doing that too. So awesome. So check with whoever you work with if they'll give you some free stuff. Okay, so Bioware Settings. So when I first got my custom spec PC that had all these quiet components, I turned it on and it sounded like a jet's engine going off next to my face, and for a moment my heart broke in heart sync. But that's because I hadn't set it up properly. So the BIOS, basically this is when you turn on your computer and you see all this random text scrolling up and it appears, and most people just ignore it and just wait for the computer to turn on. All that random text stuff is to do with your BIOS. So when you turn on your computer, there will usually be a little line at the bottom of the screen that says something along the lines of press, I don't know, F5 to enter the BIOS, or F12 to enter the BIOS, something like that. If you go in there, there'll be loads and loads of options that you don't need to worry about. But if you're on AMD, what you can do is look for this option here, cool and quiet. So check out your manufacturer's your motherboard manufacturer's guide to specifically find where to get this. And if you go to cool and quiet, what it does if you activate it, is that the PC will monitor the temperature of itself, and when the temperature is very low, it's going to decrease the speed of the fans and make them quieter, which is great. And when there's a lot of activity on your computer, it'll then turn up the fans a little bit and make them a bit more active to kind of cool the system. So this is when I turned this on my new PC, it was night and day difference. Instantly it went to a whisper quiet. It was fantastic. Intel systems have a similar function that's called speed step. So again, check through your BIOS for speed step on Intel. So very cool, very handy tip. I bought lots of fancy absorption stuff and all this acoustic tiling stuff, put that in my PC before I discovered what this was, and all that acoustic tiling and whatnot made maybe 5% worth of difference. This made the 95% difference. This made it super quiet. So this is a important little tips. Okay, so optimizing computers for audio. So computers need to be optimized to work well with audio, otherwise you'll get all these kind of annoying problems that we've all had and we all hate. Stuff like hard disk writes too slow, buffer size errors, smaller track counts, less effects, and latency issues. So each DAW will probably have in its instruction manual a list of optimization tips. Do not ignore these. Whatever you do not ignore these. Optimizing your system and following these optimization guides that they provide will really help maximize the power of your audio system. So regardless of what your DAW is, go have a look through the instruction manual for some optimization tips, and they will make a lot of difference. Okay, so it's worth noting that these optimizations will likely make your computer less useful for other applications. So remember earlier when I said try not to install lots of stuff you don't need? Well, this is one of the other reasons for it. Once you optimize your computer for audio, it might become less useful for other applications and whatnot. Okay, so here's a quick kind of summary of some key points that you need to kind of make sure you take away from all this. Having more slower CPU cores is better than fewer faster CPU cores. So having like a 6-core thing that runs at 2 GHz each core is better than having a quad core that runs at 4 GHz on each thing, for example. Get as much RAM as you can possibly afford. Minimum 4 GB. Don't even bother getting less than 4 GB in this day and age. The operating systems just use up so much RAM, and if you use things like BFD or Contact, these things, they use tons of RAM as well. So the more you have, the better. At least 2 hard drives are necessary. 3 is preferable. 2 is absolute necessity. 3. For my 3rd hard drive in my PC, I have BFD, which is my drum stuff. You might have Superior Drummer, Contact, whatever you have. Anything that uses a large amount of sample data, I keep on a separate hard drive. As I mentioned earlier, hard drives are the bottlenecks in most PCs or computer systems. And if you have multiple hard drives, then they can all share the load and share the burden. Multiple hard drives will have a massive benefit to your system, and likewise, if you only have 1 hard drive, then everything else I've talked about doesn't matter. So multiple hard drives, very important. Try to get as many USB ports as you possibly can. Again, try and avoid USB hubs if possible. They tend to not be so great, but try and plug things directly into your PC if possible, or your Mac. And try and get a free copy of Windows from your uni and or business provider, I suppose. Windows is expensive and annoying, and if you can get it for free, then that's great. Cool, so here are those 3 links again to those websites I mentioned earlier. It was dynopc.com, overclockers.co.uk, and quietpc.co.uk. All very good websites, all have kind of slightly different takes on custom PC building, but they're all very useful. Anyway, I'm nearly out of breath, but my name has been Mark Anderson Audio. I hope you managed to get something out of this video.